The Right to Education Act or the RTE provides every child from the age of 6 to 14 years the right to free and compulsory education in a neighborhood school until the completion of elementary education. But a recent plan to amend the RTE Act by the Telangana government may lead to closing down of about 12,000 schools in the state. Now, what is this amendment and what could be the possible causes and the consequences of this amendment? Let's try and find out. Now, to understand the proposed amendment by the Telangana government, first of all, we need to understand a certain section of the RTE Act which talks about the access to education, which is the Section 6 of the RTE Act. Section 6 of the RTE Act mentions that the school must be accessible to children. The provision acknowledges that even if the kids are enrolled in the school, they might not be able to complete their education based on the distance between their residence and their school. Even though the Act does not specifically mention a particular distance for the location of a school from a locality, it does talk about the principle of providing neighborhood school by the state governments. These neighborhood schools need to be easily within the reach of the targeted kids in the area. The distance has been left for the local governments to decide given the variety of the nature of the physical makeup of the country, from high altitudes in the mountains to the coastal areas. However, the central government has attempted to exemplify this in the model RTE rules circulated to the states, which provide for distance norms of 1 kilometer for children in classes 1st to 5th and 3 kilometers for children in classes 6th to 8th and for 5 kilometers for high school students. The Telangana government is planning to change the distance norm in the Act by increasing the distance to 5 kilometers for primary, secondary and high schools altogether. If the government is successful in doing that, what could be the consequences of this amendment? This could lead to a shutting down of a lot of primary and secondary schools, which will in turn affect the accessibility to education as mentioned in the Section 6. It could also mean that a lot of schools will be clubbed together, which will lead to a loss of jobs for all the teachers working in these schools. Now, the question arises, why is the government doing it? From the government's perspective, this could lead to a better management of schools and the training required for the teachers. It might help them in focusing their efforts on less number of schools and thus improving their condition. Hence, the importance of quality over quantity seems to be the primary reason behind this idea. Also, Hyderabad District Education Officer B. Venkat Narsama said, "While we have been asked to take distance as main parameter to define neighborhood schools, in urban areas, schools are established based on need, not distance. So we might also have to consider enrollment. We will get a clear picture only after our first meeting." He is part of the 6-member committee formed by the state government to look into the possible impacts of the amendment and submitting a detailed report. On the other hand, teachers, student organizations and parents claim that the government is looking for ways to shut down government schools in order to help private and corporate schools. Telangana Teachers Federation President E. Raghunandan commented on this. Earlier they tried to close schools in the name of rationalization and relocation. Now it is by amending RTE Act. Instead, the government should concentrate on providing basic facilities in the schools and recruit teachers. Given the arguments on both the sides, it is a tough choice to make and it raises some very important questions. Is shutting down the schools the right way to bring up the quality of education? Does the idea of neighborhood schools and the accessibility to education mentioned in the RTE Act amount to a reasonable argument? Although points can be made from both the sides, we have to agree that the basic idea of the right to education is to provide free and accessible education, and it is most important at the primary level. Children studying in the classes 1st to 5th are the foremost beneficiaries of the Act, and they are most unlikely to travel to the long distances of 5 kilometers for their schooling. And therefore, any amendment for whatever reasons needs to be looked at from their perspective before being implemented. Let us know what you think of the proposed amendment by the Telangana government. Is it the right thing to do? What could they do differently to make this a better plan? Also, if you want to follow us for more such stories, you can find the links in the description box below for our social media handles and our website. See you next time.